At the end of Acts chapter 24, we see something about Felix. And we have made mention of this already, but Felix, and we're going to be discussing this in just a bit, Felix is not a good man. All right, he's got some good parts about him, and we'll discuss that, but he has some shadier parts about it. And according to historical record, he got himself in trouble because of the Jews complaining about him to Caesar, and he's going to be recalled and replaced. But we see this, verse 26. Meanwhile, so we're Acts 24, verse 26. This concerns Felix and Paul. Meanwhile, he also hoped that money would be given him by Paul that he might release him. Therefore, he sent for him more often and conversed with him. We'll discuss more of that in a minute. But Felix is one who took bribes. Now, if there was something obviously wrong with Paul, that Paul was quite the lawbreaker, I don't think he would be inclined to take a bribe. But then again, I don't know. I don't know Felix. But he's willing to take a bribe here and send Paul on his way. In verse 27, but after 2 years, so here we have 2 years of Paul being a prisoner in Caesarea. After 2 years, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix wanting to do the Jews a favor, left Paul bound. Okay, so Paul has been in Caesarea for 2 years now. 2 years he has been a prisoner there where the governor is, and it's Felix, but he's going to be replaced by Festus. And now in Caesarea is a good place to be. If he's going to be anywhere, that's a good place to be, really, because Philip is there, the church is there. If you recall, you have members of the church who follow Paul and the others with him, such as Luke. They follow them from Caesarea to Jerusalem. So there is a closeness here. And being in Caesarea that's a good place for him to be. He is protected. The powers in Jerusalem can't really do anything to him except complain against the governor, which evidently that's what they did. Now with Felix. Now, the text of Acts does not say these things concerning the Jews complaining about Felix, but historians have said it, and that he is being recalled and actually is as a punishment, and there is politics behind the scene of where, not that it's terribly important, but that Felix's brother somehow managed to spare him more punishment. But we have him being replaced by Porcius Festus, and yes, his nickname was Porky, if you want to know that. But that is, C's in Latin are pronounced as K's. And it does look like Porcius. And if you don't want to get into the Porky discussion, you just pronounce it Porcius and go on. But anyway, so he is the new governor. Now, let's talk about Felix for a moment. We're going to talk about the good, then we're going to talk about the bad. All right? There is the good in Felix. Felix protected Paul. And I have to say, because he's a Roman citizen. Okay? That's the only reason. If you remember that while it was the commander, yes, that was going to have him scourged. Now, it wasn't Felix. Felix knew nothing about it. I do believe that Felix would have had the same sort of idea, except that Paul is spared all this because he's a Roman citizen. So Felix knows he cannot do certain things. And Felix did not take the accusations against Paul as fact. Okay, that's a good part about him. He didn't take it as fact. He wanted there's got to be proof, of which no proof is supplied ever. No proof is supplied in this. It's just accusations and assertions. That's it. Now, accusations and assertions, anybody can do that. I can make any kind of accusation against you. Any kind. But that doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's an accusation does not mean it's true. And they're trying to make something out of this because they want Paul dead. And after 2 years, we're going to see they still want him dead. It's not enough that he's been in prison in Caesarea. It's not in Jerusalem anymore. He's in Caesarea. He's been a prisoner there for 2 years. It's not enough that out of sight, out of mind, they still want him dead. Now, all right, so Felix, another thing about Felix, a good part, is that Felix had a more accurate knowledge of the way, and he is willing to talk about it. All right, now that's a good thing about him. And he knows more accurately of the way. He's come in contact somehow. He does have a Jewish wife, Drusilla. Did she know more? Perhaps she did. But I think that he knew that it could not be called a sect. That's just my feeling in it. That it's not a sect of the Jews as his accusers want to call it. It's not. It's not the sect of the Nazarenes. Okay. And Felix also listened to Paul. And Felix also, in listening to Paul, became frightened because Paul had been reasoning with him concerning righteousness, self-control, and judgment. And judgment would be the biggie. That would be the frightening thing. That'd be the frightening thing. And so he would listen. Now, here is the bad. One, Felix is a politician. Okay? Politicians are slick. They are clever. They also, more than anybody else, as a group, more than anybody else, wants to appeal to people, the population, as much as they can. Now, when Jesus spoke of those that would rather please men than please God, yeah, politicians are the deepest in that group. All right, because they've got to have an appeal that is there, especially in this case because he's not voted in to place. The governors are not voted in. They are placed there by Caesar. And Caesar has to believe at least that you're doing a good job wherever you are. And if you are doing a good job where you are, then you might get promoted to moved to a better place instead of some backwater area, some more of an area less like Rome. You will be transferred to a place that's nicer. You have a nicer place, and that's the idea, is moving up. And so someone like Felix, he needs to have the general approval of the people he's governing because Caesar's going to hear about it. Now, here's some other things. While Felix would have conversations with Paul, he continued to meet with Paul, but still did not believe. Now, were these not more convenient times? Because he says in verse 23, "Go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you." Well, he's had convenient times. You know, we can talk about people never having a convenient time. But next verse, "Meanwhile, he also hoped that money would be given him by Paul that he might release him. Therefore, he sent for him more often and conversed with him." Are these not convenient times? Then why did you have him come in? Well, we know why. He was hoping to get a bribe, which is the next point in this, is that Felix wanted a bribe to release him. As we just said a few minutes ago, if Paul had been a serious lawbreaker, He is a rebel rouser. He is a murderer. He is someone that is a threat to peace. I'm not sure that Felix would have even taken a bribe. Maybe he would, I don't know. But he hoped for one. And it doesn't mean that in these conversations, that he was trying to pressure Paul to give him something. It doesn't say that. He was just hoping for it. Give him more opportunity to, are you enjoying your stay here? Wow, I think you could be in better places, don't you? Offering kind of hints. But it doesn't say any of that. Okay, now Felix, after 2 years, all right, verse 27 again, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix wanting to do the Jews a favor, left Paul bound. All right, wanting to do the Jews a favor, that gives us his motive in it. All right, it's not that, well, you never gave me a bribe, I'm leaving you in there. It wasn't that. It's that he wanted to do the Jews a favor. Well, he's leaving. Why would he want to do them a favor? Because they've gotten him in trouble. That's why. And maybe they'll ease up. Maybe this will appease them, and there won't be so much complaining against him. Because he does, if historians have it right, he does have to go visit Caesar in all this. And he's being replaced by Festus. Now, let's understand concerning Festus. Festus, and we'll get to this in time, Festus is also a politician. While they have their good side and they do some good, there's also the shadier, not so good side in them. And here is another thing about leaving Paul bound, is evidently Festus knew nothing and had been informed nothing concerning Paul. That Felix, if there was any meeting of the two, like I've got, waiting to help the other governor get up to speed, if there was any meeting of the two, if Felix never told him anything about Paul, we're starting from square one concerning Paul. And he has to learn about Paul when the Jews in Jerusalem tell him about Paul. He doesn't know anything about it. And it could be that given all the other problems that one may face governing a land, that this would be a very, very minor issue to begin with. But he's going to try to get it off his plate, as we might say. He wants to get this settled and get it done. All right, now we go to chapter 25. Chapter 25. Here we have the arrival of Festus. Now when Festus, chapter 25 verse 1, now when Festus had come to the province, after 3 days, he went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem. So he goes to Caesarea, he enters the region, he goes to Caesarea, which is not far from the coast. And he stays there for 3 days. I guess he gets himself where everything kind of settled. Then he's going to Jerusalem. So he's going to do some business. That's what he's going to do, and to learn a little bit more about who he is going to be governing. Verse 2, and as we said, he knows nothing about Paul, and he's going to be saying this to Agrippa, that he didn't know anything until he was told it in Jerusalem. The man under his own roof, he doesn't know anything about. Okay, so verse 2, then the high priest and the chief men of the Jews informed him against Paul, and they petitioned him. So this is where he finds out about it. And this would seem to be top on their list. Who knows what else they may have talked about? I don't know, but this is one thing they definitely discussed. And it may have been the only thing they discussed with him, or at least that they were wanting to discuss with him. So here we have the high priest, again, chief men of the Jews, and they petition him. Now, verse 3, and this is, they ask this favor, asking a favor against him, that he would summon him, that's Paul, to Jerusalem. So Festus is currently in Jerusalem. And this isn't saying, go back to Caesarea and bring him back. All right, that's going to sound a bit like we're delegating to you. You got to go back up there and you got to bring him back. They're just saying, summon him. Summon him, bring Paul here to where we all are. Summon him to Jerusalem. Notice this, while they lay in ambush along the road to kill him. And I have a feeling those 40 some odd men aren't dead yet. It's been 2 years. They said they wouldn't eat or drink. I think it's the same some odd 40 men who are going to lay in ambush along the road to kill Paul. Now, but Festus answered that Paul should be kept in Caesarea and that he himself was going there shortly. All right, now we'll get to his what he's going to say, but there's a couple of things in this. It's the same plot, isn't it, in how they're going to kill Paul. It's the same plot. Bring him here, and that's for there to be a hearing concerning this, and we can inquire more about all of these things. But that's the false pretense. What they're out to do is to ambush on the road. It's the same plot. What this means is they never knew the first plot had been known. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trying this again, because they couldn't know what if Festus knew about it or not. All right, let me rephrase this. They would assume Festus couldn't know anything about the plot because they would believe that Felix knew nothing about the plot, that Paul being sent up to Caesarea was just an inconvenience. It wasn't that he knew anything, as just happened to be what he did. The commander taking Paul up to Felix. And here they're trying the same thing again. And if the plot were known by Felix and the Romans, then surely they would tell Festus. Well, surely they would. But they don't know the plot was known. And here's another thing. I don't think Festus is told about it. Festus didn't even know about Paul when he gets there, much less a plot about Paul. So, but he's not going to do this. But Festus, verse 4, but Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea and that he himself was going there shortly. So it's going to be more than 10 days, and he's going to be going. He's got things he's got to do in Jerusalem. It's going to be more than 10 days. And then he's going back to Caesarea. You can follow me there. We can travel along and you can see him there. And I think he's going to keep him in Caesarea because he's a Roman citizen, not because he knows there was a plot. It's the same plot. All right, he's in, and because he doesn't know anything about this. Now, verse 5, therefore, he said, let those who have authority among you go down with me and accuse this man to see if there is any fault in him. So this is a replay, really, of chapter 23. This is going back to what happened at chapter 23. Really chapter 24, where Felix invites them up, and there's just accusations. That's all there is. There's no proof. And when they come up this time, and they do, when they come up this time, it's more the same. This is a repeat of the events of chapter 24. Felix says, you guys, those with authority, whoever, come on up. We'll have a hearing about this. Now Festus is doing the same thing, which seems to me like if he knew anything about Paul's case, which he doesn't. He says he will tell Agrippa, he's going to tell Agrippa that when they came up, they accused him of things that, nothing that he supposed. The things that he supposed they would accuse him of, that's not what they accused him of doing. So he doesn't know. He's at square one in all of this. So he says, all right, let those who have authority come up with me. We'll see what happens. Verse 6, and when he remained among them more than 10 days, so he's in Jerusalem more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, he commanded Paul to be brought. So they traveled to Caesarea. Now it's I do believe, if I'm remembering correctly, 50 miles, and that's rough. All of these are rough estimates because I don't know the ancient roads and how bendy or curvy or anything like that. I can't know that. But we're looking at about 50 miles. So it would take about a couple of days to get there. All right. And so after he's there, the next day, he sits in judgment and he commanded Paul to be brought. So here is a repeat of chapter 24. Verse 7. When he had come, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood about and laid many serious complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. All right? They lay these accusations, they lay these complaints, and they are evidently serious against Paul. But they can prove none of the things. They prove nothing. And I can only assume they're basically the same complaints that we heard Tertullius say, which were, some of them were things like, this man is a plague. He is a ringleader of this sect. These are pretty big things, okay? And he's been doing this across the world. He's been doing these things. And he is this one who is bringing about violence and rebellion. And none of those things are true. And, okay, you're going to need to prove that. You're going to need to prove that. So they have these serious charges that they lay against him, but they can prove nothing. Nothing whatever. So nothing's really changed since chapter 24. Nothing's changed. You've had 2 years to gather your proof, and you don't have it. Verse 8. Okay, now Paul is going to answer for himself. While he answered for himself, this is Paul, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I offended in anything at all. All right, concerning the Jewish law, he's done nothing. Concerning the temple, he's done nothing. Okay, so what about Roman law? What about Caesar? He's done nothing. There's nothing there. And he now tells, but Festus, wanting to do the Jews a favor, answered Paul and said, now, we can know now he knows nothing about the plot. Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and there be judged before me concerning these things? And no, Paul is not going to do that. Paul, you've got to be kidding me. Paul is not going to do that. And this would have been the first time he has heard Paul defending himself, well, the accusations in Paul defending himself of saying, I've done nothing whatsoever. All right, yeah, they've proved nothing. They've proved nothing, but he wants to do them a favor. All right, that's the act of a politician. Now, Paul is not against justice whatsoever. If it is justice that he dies as a breaker of the law, he's okay to do it. That's fine. Justice has been done. But loving justice, if he's not a lawbreaker, then let him go. Okay. Now this is, are you willing to go down? And he knows that he's dealing with a Roman citizen, and he doesn't have to be judged by these men. Festus knows that. Otherwise, he would have never been brought up to Caesarea. And he would have been this scourged man left in Jerusalem and probably had died by now. But he's a Roman citizen, and so Festus has to ask permission. Are you willing to do that? No, he's not willing to do that. And all of this is working providentially. He's going to appeal to Caesar, and all of this is working providentially to exactly what Christ told Paul in chapter 23. As you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome. All right, all of this is transpiring. Now this was before he was before the riot at the temple and taken by the Romans. That Jesus is telling him then, you've got a future. You're not going to be dying in Jerusalem. You've got a future. You're going to be going to Rome. And so it is here providentially, it is going to be occurring. So Festus wants to do the Jews a favor just like Felix had done, trying to do them a favor. All right, they kind of riled up about this. All right, let's see. I don't want them too angry at me in all this. So Paul said, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you very well know. Now that's an accusation against Festus. Actually it is. Whether he took it that way, I don't know. But he says, I appeal to Caesar. I've done nothing against them, as you very well know. You know. And this is against Festus because Festus asks this question to appeal to the Jews. He asked them just to please them. And I've done nothing. I've done nothing here. And you know it. Verse 11. Now, as we said, he's not against justice. If true justice means he dies, then so be it. But if justice doesn't say he dies, then it's murder. All right? But he says, verse 11, for if I am an offender or have committed anything deserving of death, I do not object to dying. All right? Bring it. But if there is nothing in these things of which these men accuse me, no one can deliver me to them. I appeal to Caesar. And he is saying this. This is also, I see, against Festus. No one can deliver me to these men. No one can. Not by their threats to Festus or Festus wanting to do them a favor. He says, no one can deliver me to these men. No one can deliver me to the Jews. I appeal to Caesar. And that's that. That is that. Now, Festus is going to take a little bit of a counsel here. He's going to speak for a little bit. But then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, "You have appealed to Caesar. To Caesar you shall go." All right, now, those powerful men in Jerusalem just lost this. They just lost it. They have no authority at all to do anything to him, and he's completely kept safe from them. And now he's going to be leaving the country, and he's going to Rome. There's nothing they can do now. There's absolutely nothing. And as a Roman citizen, he can do this. Now, if this were, let's just switch this, if this were Peter, it'd be a completely different outcome. Completely different. Peter's not a Roman citizen, so he could not appeal to Caesar. You can't do it. It would have to be something else is done here, but it's not appealing to Caesar. And so, yes, Acts chapter 23, verse 11 is now going into, it's going to be fulfilled. Starting here, it's going to be fulfilled, because as Festus, the governor, said, "To Caesar you shall go." Man, where is Caesar? Caesar's not in Jerusalem, he's in Rome. So he's going to have to go to Rome, precisely as Jesus told Paul, "You're going to testify to me in Rome." So that's where he's going to go. Now, this next section concerns that of a visit by King Agrippa and Bernice. All right, there is a new governor in the region. His name is Porcius Festus. All right, he's been busy in Jerusalem. He's been doing things in Caesarea, and it's about time to go visit him. Okay, and so King Agrippa and his wife Bernice, they go to visit to greet Festus. Which would be the proper thing to do, and it would show goodwill, and it would show that of recognizing him as a someone, and so they go to greet him, and when they had been there many days, so they stay for a while. They stay, and no doubt the Romans would have done as much as they could to bring out the red carpet for the likes of King Agrippa. Yes, ma'am?
Where are they coming from?
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure where they would have been. But they go to Caesarea in all this. And so we have... as much as they could, the Romans would have put out the red carpet for the likes of Agrippa. And now, if Agrippa were a proper practicing Jew, there would be no feasting with the Romans. All right, but there's no guarantee in that. And that's why I say as much as they could. They're there for many days. Now, there's going to be conversations. Festus, when he had been there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There is a certain man left in a prisoner by Felix." All right. Now, this is like showing how long this has been going on, which, he just got there really. But it's a problem left him by Felix. Felix didn't solve this problem. And so he says, "I've got a prisoner here left by Felix." Verse 15, look at this. "About whom the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me when I was in Jerusalem, asking for a judgment against him." Meaning, he didn't know anything about him. He knew nothing. This is how he gets his information. I've got who and what has he done? Okay, He doesn't. He's coming as a just blank. He doesn't know. Verse 16. To them I answered, it is not the custom of the Romans to deliver any man to destruction before the accused meets the accusers face to face and has opportunity to answer for himself concerning the charge against him. So we're not just going to allow you to kill him and execute him without a trial. There's got to be something. And he's got to be able to defend himself. He's got to be given time to defend himself in an official capacity, in an official way. Okay? So the Romans aren't going to deliver this guy to you, which evidently is what they were asking. This is evidently what they were asking. And so he just says, no, I'm not going to do that. Verse 17, therefore, when they had come together without any delay, the next day I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought in. So, yeah, he is trying to get things done quickly and efficiently. When the accusers stood up, they brought no accusation against him of such things as I supposed. He's like that commander in Jerusalem. He's like him of the Claudius Lysias or Lysias. He's like him of he had assumptions as to who Paul was and assumptions as to what Paul must have done to have this kind of an uproar. And but this is nothing as I supposed. There's nothing that I just thought it would be, that I suspected it would be. Verse 19, but had some questions about him, against him, had some questions against him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who had died, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. Now, for a complete outsider, this sounds like a very strange situation. A very strange situation. Okay. How do you judge in all of this? Okay, if you told me, let's just say, we'll just pick on Napoleon for today. If you said Napoleon is dead, and I claim, no, Napoleon's still alive. Napoleon is alive. Or do you take that to a judge? I mean, that's weird. That's just weird. Okay, and now the Romans would very well know that Jesus of Nazareth was crucified, and they would guarantee the one they crucified is dead. Okay, and now they say, you have the Jews saying he's dead, but Paul affirmed to be alive. Okay, now this comes off as just weird. Why would you be doing this except you are set against the Christ and against His church? That's the only reason you'd be doing this. And doing something like this, you are choosing to look like an idiot. I mean, truly you are. When it comes to something like this, that these are the things that this is what this is about. This is very, very strange. And so he wants Agrippa's opinion on it. What do you think about this? Now, verse 20, and because I was uncertain of such questions, I asked whether he was willing to go to Jerusalem and there be judged concerning these matters. But when Paul appealed to be reserved for the decision of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I could send him to Caesar. Okay, so he's basically giving the events in all this. And I asked him, does he want to clear this up in Jerusalem? And no, he's appealing to Caesar. So, he's set to go there, but you can't just send him at any point in the year. You can't do it. And things have to be, no doubt, settled in with some things. But till I could send him to Caesar. Verse 22, then Agrippa said to Festus, I also would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, he said, you shall hear him. Okay, so we will continue in this, and this is going to be what Agrippa and Bernice find out from Paul. And once again, there is Paul in all these points is not only giving personal testimony concerning himself, but there's also the gospel being taught in this. And really, they're inseparable because he is being tried. He's on trial because he preaches the gospel of Christ. That's why. And so everyone is hearing a sermon. They're hearing a sermon. And so we'll continue next week, and appreciate everyone being with us. And hope everyone has a good week. Thank you.